Hey, what's up? Welcome to our first video lecture for AP1. And today's topic is basically an introduction to human anatomy and physiology. So, what we're going to go through first and foremost is what exactly do these three words mean? Like, what does it mean to be a human? What is the study of anatomy? And what is the study of physiology? That is the first thing on our agenda today. So let's get started with talking about humans. So in terms of our biological classification, humans are going to be animals, we're going to be vertebrates, we're going to be mammals, primates, and hominids. So those are all groups that we belong to. Now we are animals for three reasons. All right, we are multicellular. So starfish, wolverine, turtle, human here, all four of these are animals for the same three reasons. And the three reasons are listed over here. Number one, we're multicellular. So we're made of many cells. I mean, humans are made of trillions of cells. And organisms like us, we move. We are capable of movement. Another word for that is that we have motility. We are motile. And lastly, speaking of those cells, we are missing something. We do not have what are called cell walls. So we do have cell membranes, but no cell walls. In this red box here, this is actually what's called a blood smear. So we're looking at a microscopic slide made from someone's blood. And we can see a bunch of human white blood cells. So like these are all human white blood cells. Human white blood cell right here. All these guys are human white blood cells. Okay? But they're also bacterial cells here. Like this guy right here, this rod-shaped thing is a bacterial cell. These are bacterial cells over here. So human cells, like this white blood cell right here, it has a cell membrane on the outside, but it does not have this structure known as a cell wall. Now, these bacteria here actually do have cell walls. So they're different from us in this case. And when you take microbiology, you'll learn more about bacterial cell walls. For now, suffice it to say, human cells do not have cell walls. Okay, so not only are we animals, we're also vertebrates. And we're vertebrates because we have a vertebral column, which we see pictured over here. This is an adult vertebral column. It's got 26 lovely bones in it. Not all vertebrates are going to have the same number of vertebrae, and there'll be structural differences, but all vertebrates have a vertebral column. Now, the big functions of a vertebral column are twofold. Support, so helping to support our body weight, support our limbs, support our head, and also protection. So the spinal cord sits inside this hole in the vertebral column. All right. What other groups do we belong to? Well, we are mammals. And there are three reasons we're mammals, okay? We have hair. All mammals have hair. Hair provides protection from the sun. Hair provides insulation, sensation. We'll talk a little bit more about hair when we get down to the integumentary system in a while. We also are mammals because we have mammary glands. Mammary glands, of course, are important for nursing, for milk production. And all mammals have mammary glands, and both males and females, of course, have mammary glands. When we're doing the reproductive system, we'll come back to mammary gland structure and function. Also, finally, that third reason is we have three middle ear bones. We're not going to do a lot of ear anatomy this semester, but this is an ear right here. Here's the ear canal. This is the outer or external ear. There's the eardrum right there. And just beyond the eardrum is going to be the middle ear. The middle ear. And that middle ear in mammals has three bones. You can see just how tiny they are. They're super little. They're called the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. You know, so much smaller than this dime here. And what's really cool is I'm shaking those middle ear bones of yours right now. If you're listening to this video, I'm shaking those bones. I'm able to shake them because they are so small. Even if I talk kind of softly, I'm still going to shake them, which is really cool. More on these guys when we get down to bones and the skeletal system. Okay, we're also part of this group called primates, and there are 3 reasons we're primates. Number 1, we've got forward-facing eyes. The forward-facing eyes is really good for depth perception. We also have opposable thumbs, so thumbs that can move, like this person is demonstrating here. Opposable thumbs are really good for grasping. And last but not least, we have a pair of collarbones or clavicles. We're not going to call them collarbones. We're going to call them clavicles in this class. We got 2 separate clavicles, one on each side, which is very important for the mobility of our upper limb. So this is why we belong to this group called primates, like this tarsier here and other monkeys and apes and things. Okay, our last group that we're going to discuss is this group known as the hominids. And we are hominids for 3 reasons. Again, notice 3 reasons all the time. We are bipedal. If you've done the first lab or watched the first lab video, you know about bipedalism and how it applies to the human anatomical position and words that are synonymous. There are a couple other reasons that are going to make us hominids. We have a big ratio of brain size to body size. So there are animals with bigger brains than us, but we've got almost everybody beat in terms of how big our brains are for our body size. And of course, obviously, this is what makes you so smart. Lastly, this is the inferior surface of the skull here, and that's where we find this structure called the foramen magnum. Literally means big hole. Magnum means big, foramen means hole. In hominids, we find the foramen magnum at the base of the skull. All right, so those are some things that make us, you and me, human. Let's now move on and figure out what it means to do anatomy. Anatomy is the study of structure. So we're looking at where things are, what things are next to, how things appear, how they're attached, what parts do they have. Anatomy literally means to cut apart. The ana means apart. The tomia means to cut. Because of course, if you're doing the study of structure, if you want to know what the structure of a liver, what the parts of a liver are, you got to cut that liver up. So that is our definition of anatomy. Physiology, on the other hand, is the study of function. All right, so physio means nature, logos means discourse or talking. So literally, physiology is talking about nature, but our definition for us is we're studying function. We're doing human physiology, so we are doing human function. Now, if we were looking at how sound waves shake this eardrum and how that shakes those 3 middle ear bones, remember we just talked about that a moment ago, and then how that shakes the oval window, which shakes a variety of fluids, which creates electrical currents, which sends a signal to your brain. The how and the why of all that is going to be physiology. If I'm studying the structures here, then I'm doing anatomy. But if I'm studying how they work, how they function, what they do, I am doing physiology. And we are going to do both anatomy and physiology. All right? They're going to go hand in hand. They are said to be complementary. There is a complementarity between anatomy and physiology. Another way to say that is structure is going to match function. Now, I got a penny here this time. Last time I had a dime. This is a penny. And this guy right here is one of those middle ear bones. It is called the stapes. And it is incredibly small. Its small size allows me to shake your stapes with my sound waves. Even when I'm, not speaking very loudly, I can still shake it. I could probably whisper right now and you could still hear me. Because that bone is so small. That bone was done growing when you were like 1 year old. So it's super tiny. Now this over here, this big bone, is called the sacrum. This bone is going to be the base of your vertebral column. And remember, we're vertebrates. We've got a vertebral column. And one of the big reasons for having a vertebral column is for support. And this big, strong bone is big and strong so that it'll provide support. Pretty much every anatomical thing we do, we look at, its structure is going to go along with its job. It's going to match its function. So this is a really key thing to keep in mind as you're progressing through Anatomy 1 and Anatomy 2. Okay, so as we're doing anatomical study, there are a variety of different subtypes. And I've got 4 of them listed right here. There are more. This is not a comprehensive list, but these are 4 types of anatomical study. These are 4 types that we are going to do in this course in varying degrees. We're going to do a lot of gross anatomy, a lot of histology, a little bit of cytology, and occasionally a tiny bit of pathology. But these are 4 basic types of anatomical study, and we got to be familiar with that. Now, the word gross in gross anatomy is not like, ew, disgusting, gross. It is gross in the terms of something being big. You speak French or German, you know that meaning that word can have. Think about your gross income versus your net income, right? The gross is the bigger one. So gross anatomy is the study of structures visible to the naked eye. So if I were looking at the structures of these many muscles in this human, if I was examining the structure of this temporal bone, which we're going to do, we're going to name this part, we're going to name this part, we're going to name this part, we're going to name that part, we're going to name that part, we're going to name this part, and there's more. There's a whole other side to this guy. Okay? So when I'm naming those structures, learning where they are, and I can see them with just my eyeballs, no microscope necessary, I am doing gross anatomy. Now, if I'm busting out the microscope, I'm probably doing some histology. Histology is the study of tissues. A tissue is a group of cells with a common structure and function. So up top here, we've got a bunch of cells up here. This is the lining of your cheek. These cells belong to a particular type of tissue that are helping give you protection in that cheek lining, what's called that buccal lining. This down here is an important part of your pancreas. These cells are another tissue. They are making important hormones for us, helping us regulate things like our blood sugar. So, using a microscope, probably looking at tissues. And the study of tissues is histology. Histo means tissue. Ology, study of, right? And a tissue is a group of cells that are similar in structure and in function. Okay. If we use a more powerful microscope, we can study cells. And so if we're zooming in and looking at individual cells and what those cells are doing, what kind of parts they have, then we are doing cytology. Cytology being the study of cells. All right, we're going to do a little bit of cytology this semester. We'll also do a little bit of pathology. Here are two organs that are diseased, and pathology is the study of disease. Patho literally means suffering, so literally study of suffering. That kind of makes sense, though. These are two diseased kidneys. This is a heart. If you've done lab 1 already, you might be able to figure out this is a transverse section of the heart, and it's got some disease going on in here as well. So if we're studying disease, we're doing pathology. Now notice you could do some gross pathology or histopathology, right? You could kind of combine these terms. You could do some pathophysiology, like how the disease functions and works and progresses. So don't be afraid to, unjoin and rejoin these word parts to make new ones. All right. So as we study anatomy and physiology, we are going to talk about levels of structure. This is also known as the hierarchy of the human body. So for example, we have the whole human organism right here in anatomical position. Human organism is then divided up into organ systems. Organ systems divided up into organs. Organs are made of tissues. And like we just recently established, a tissue is a group of cells. Then cells are composed of organelles and macromolecules and molecules. Molecules also make up macromolecules. Macromolecules and molecules make up organelles. And atoms, if we're going down all the way to the bottom of our hierarchy here. We're going to deal at all these levels, not so much the atomic level, molecular a little bit, macromolecular, yeah, organelles, yeah, cells, of course, tissues, definitely, organs, you better believe it, organ systems, absolutely. So we're going to hit all these levels. And what we're going to do right now, you and I, is we're going to walk through those levels. All right, just another look at them in a pyramid here. Instead of a food pyramid, this is a hierarchy pyramid. So we would take an organism, break it down into its systems. Like for example, the urinary system. Then break down the system into its organs. For example, the bladder. Then break down the bladder into its tissues, like the smooth muscle tissue in the wall of the bladder. Tissues, of course, made of cells, like a smooth muscle cell. That cell will contain organelles in it, also contain molecules, like this water molecule here. And of course, we could break down that water molecule into its component hydrogen and oxygen atoms. So let's walk through some of these levels of hierarchy. We're going to start with organ systems, and there are 11 organ systems we're going to deal with. In no particular order here: integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic/immune, respiratory, urinary, digestive, and reproductive. Now, this semester in AP1, we are going to do integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, and just a little bit of endocrine. Then AP2, we knock out a little more endocrine plus all these guys. So we actually do more systems in AP2 than we do in AP1. Okay. Let's go through these systems. Integumentary system. The major organ of the integumentary system is your skin. Two big jobs: protection. You always need protection from physical and chemical insult, from bacteria, viruses, which are always accosting you. Also, skin is going to regulate body temperature. If I were to put on a sweatshirt and then a jacket and some sweatpants and start doing some jumping jacks, you would see my skin and my face turn bright red as my skin tries to help shunt blood and heat to the surface. to help me regulate body temperature. So really two humongously important functions we've got here. Okay, skeletal system. We got our bones, as well as our cartilages and the tendons and ligaments attaching the bones to things. And big functions of my skeletal system are protection. My brain is in my skull. My spinal cord is in my vertebral column. My heart and my lungs are protected by my thoracic cage. So a lot of protection. And of course, support, right? I mean, I'm sitting up. Maybe you're sitting up. Maybe you're standing up. Skeletal system lets you do that. And last but not least, we are storing minerals. Particularly, of course, you know the major mineral we're storing in bone. It's calcium. Moving on, muscular system. We're also going to hit this one this semester. Big organs, of course, the muscles. Functions, movement. I mean, every time you're moving something, whether that's your body or something within your body, something in your environment, using muscles. If you're manipulating your environment, if you're using tools, using those opposable thumbs of yours, you're using muscles. The muscles are also responsible for thermogenesis. Thermogenesis. Genesis means create. Thermo means heat. So when do you do some thermogenesis? Think about if you're really cold and you might start shivering. And yet, muscular contractions with the purpose of generating heat. All right, fantastic. We're also going to do the nervous system in AP1. Big organs are the brain. Of course, remember we've got a big brain for our body. So the brain plus the spinal cord and the many nerves coursing through our body. Nervous system does a lot. It controls so many parts of your body, regulates so many things, responsible for your consciousness, so much stuff. All right, endocrine system. Endocrine system is also a control system, but the endocrine system uses these chemical signals in your blood called hormones. That's what hormones are, chemical signals in the blood. Think about things like insulin, testosterone, estrogen, and there's a lot more. Endocrine organs can include ones like the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the pancreas, which is also a digestive organ. So notice how it's doing, double duty, like belonging to two separate systems. The testes, which make testosterone, the ovaries, which make estrogens and progesterone. And again, organs that belong to multiple systems here. So endocrine's kind of unique in that regard. We'll do a little bit of endocrine stuff this semester, a little more in AP2. And now moving on to systems we hit in AP2, we're going to hit the cardiovascular system, which, of course, big organs are the heart and the blood vessels, transporting stuff, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, wastes, hormones, heat, water, etc. Super important for life. Lymphatic/immune system. So notice all these green lymphatic vessels. They're part of my lymphatic system. They return fluid from my tissues to my bloodstream. If you've been on your feet all day long, you might have kind of overwhelmed your lymphatic system, and your feet might get a little swollen because you haven't gotten all that tissue fluid back into your blood. There are also lymph nodes. And in organs like the thymus, this yellowish guy on the heart here, and the spleen hanging out right here. Now, the immune part of this is going to protect us from pathogens. We know pathology is the study of disease. A pathogen is a disease-causing organism. And of course, how often are we, being attacked by pathogens? Pretty much all the time. All right. Respiratory system. We got a whole pathway with our nose and our nasal cavity, our pharynx, our larynx, our trachea, our big bronchi, as well as the lungs and all their individual parts. And these organs are doing gas transport and gas exchange. We're moving gases into and out of our body. Then we're exchanging oxygen and CO2, getting them into and out of the blood, respectively. The digestive system. Again, we got a nice pathway here. We got our mouth and oral cavity. We got our pharynx, salivary glands. Notice how the pharynx is both a respiratory and a digestive pathway. Then we got our esophagus, our stomach, our intestines, liver and gallbladder. Gallbladder's a little green guy tucked in there. Pancreas is hiding. But these are all major digestive organs, which are going to be involved in moving food, digesting nutrients, absorbing nutrients, and eliminating the leftover wastes. Okay, just a few more systems to do. Next up, the urinary system. All right, urinary system, the second to last system we're going to be covering in AP2. It includes the kidneys, which are going to make urine, the ureters, which are going to transport urine, the urinary bladder, which stores and pushes that urine out, plus the urethra, which is the final tube in the pathway. And the big functions of this system is to get rid of wastes, regulate the volume of our blood pressure, our pH, and our electrolytes. Of course, remember electrolytes are things like sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, etc. All right, finally, we got our reproductive system. And of course, we separate this into two different versions, female and male. Major organs of the female repro system include the ovaries, the uterus, fallopian or uterine tubes, and vagina. We are making gametes. Gametes are sex cells, such as oocytes. We're making hormones, such as estrogen and progesterone. Of course, pregnancy and childbirth are part of your female reproductive system as well. Male repro system, we've got testes. Kind of hard to see the little thing on the top of the testes. Those are the epididymides, vas deferences, prostate gland, seminal vesicles, penis. Those are the major organs making sex cells, which are known as gametes. The male ones are sperm or spermatozoa, as well as hormones such as testosterone. All right, wow, good job. That was our run through the 11 different organ systems. Fantastic. Now, organ systems are made of organs. Organs are structures composed of multiple tissues, and organs are performing defined functions. Like this is the heart. There are different tissues. The lining, the middle, the covering are different tissues. The heart has a defined location, as well as a defined function, which of course is to pump blood. These are bones here. Okay, bones and muscles. Bones and muscles are going to have multiple tissues inside them, doing defined functions, and they're in defined locations, so they are organs as well. Now, as we mentioned earlier, tissues are groups of cells that are similar looking and have a common function. So we've got some skin right here. This is a tissue called the epidermis. This is a tissue called the dermis down here. And these tissues have similar structures and similar functions within them. This is muscle tissue over here. This is about like 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 8-ish muscle cells here. And these muscle cells are going to look alike and have a common job. Remember, if we're looking at tissues, we're using a microscope. And do you remember what that study was called, that study of tissues? It was, give me the first letter. First letter was an H. And if you said histology, then good on you for that. All right. Let's keep going. We're just moving along. No rest. Powering through. All right. So we know what a tissue is. There are four basic varieties of tissues. There are epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. So those are my four basic tissue types. Epithelial tissue is a covering and a lining. So if you look at the outside of any organ, or if you look in a mirror and look at yourself, or you look at your skin, if you look at your skin, I'm looking at my palms of my hands right now. I am looking at epithelial tissue. This is a heart over here. This is epithelial tissue that you're looking at, that my cursor is going over. This here is a transverse cut through what looks like to be a urethra here. And if there is an opening, like what's called a lumen, a space in a hollow organ, the lining is an epithelium. So think about like all your hollow organs: esophagus, trachea, stomach, intestines, uterine tubes, vas deferences, veins, arteries. All of those things have a lumen, so like a space. And of course that space can be occupied by stuff, right? But the lining of that space is going to be epithelial tissue. Body cavities, which we cover in Lab 2. So if you've done Lab 2 or you've watched the Lab 2 video, you know about the thoracic cavity, the abdominopelvic cavity. Those cavities are lined by epithelial tissue. Connective tissue. We're talking about things like bone, cartilage, ligaments, tendons, even blood, and there's many other examples. Connective tissues are jacks of all trades. They offer us support, protection, transport, a whole lot of stuff. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is going to make things like the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Part of the nervous system, obviously. Here's a sheep brain right here. We're going to dissect that later this semester. Human brain and spinal cord, nerves coming out of it, all made of nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is functioning in control, communication, coordination, and so much more. Final tissue type, muscle tissue, which of course we know functions in movement and thermogenesis. We mentioned thermogenesis a little while ago. Thermogenesis is the creation of heat. There are actually three basic types of muscle tissue. So we're just going to get those named right now. So if you're thinking about muscle tissue like muscles that you work out, muscles that move your bones, those are skeletal muscles. There's also a type of muscle tissue in your heart called cardiac muscle. And there's a type of muscle tissue in hollow organs, like this urinary bladder here, called smooth muscle tissue. So those are my basic types of muscle tissue. And we're moving down our levels of structure here. We are in the level of cells. So we just left tissue. Tissues. We know tissues are made of cells. And cells are the basic structural unit and functional unit of all living organisms. Basically means that like every organ, it and its parts are made of cells. The job that every organ and its parts have are jobs that are done by cells. Our human body has roughly 40 trillion cells, of which there are about 200 different types. Notice the nice big purple nucleus here and all the many organelles in this cell. Okay, this is a human cell. So thinking back a moment, we're made of animals, right? So what would this human cell not have? Think back to earlier in the beginning of today's video. If you said a cell wall, good job. You are right. Okay. Speaking of organelles, let's talk about 3 of them. Of course, there are more. We got the nucleus, this purple guy right here. We got the endoplasmic reticulum, this blue guy right here, very big, very elaborate here. As well as we have a few mitochondria. Mitochondria is the plural. Mitochondrion is the singular. Those are some important organelles we gotta be aware of. Start at the nucleus. It is our cellular control center. It is going to contain our DNA, which are the blueprints we use to make proteins. Note that the nucleus is purple in this picture. When we do histology, the nucleus is almost always going to appear purple. So if you let me backtrack for a sec, just bear with me here. Look at this histology here, okay? This is tissue, right? I got a lot of cells here. Do you see all these purple guys? All these purple guys are nuclei. So each one of these purple things is a nucleus belonging to a particular cell. I see more nuclei down here. If I see nuclei, I got more nuclei over here. If I see nuclei, I got cells. So they're almost always that purple color. Like it wasn't just a random choice that they chose purple for the picture here. All right, where was I? The endoplasmic reticulum. There's actually 2 flavors of endoplasmic reticulum. There's rough and smooth. The rough is right here. It's got all these little things called ribosomes on it. The rough ER is for protein production. Over here I get ER without ribosomes. That's called smooth ER. And it does a bunch of things, including making lipids. All right, the last organelle we are going to knock out is the mitochondrion. There's a mitochondrion right there. Of course, the plural is mitochondria. It is the cellular power plant. It's where we take the energy that we get from food, like nutrient energy. So think like, simple sugars like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, and we are able to take the energy from those nutrients and then store that energy into a new kind of molecule called adenosine triphosphate, which maybe you heard about in a previous biology class, or you heard of its abbreviation, which is ATP. Now, most cells have just a single nucleus. We'll meet some exceptions as we proceed. Cells can vary in the amount of ER and the number of mitochondria they have. So like a cell that makes a lot of proteins is going to have an abundant ER. A cell that, like a muscle cell that has high energy demands, is going to have a lot of mitochondria. So our structure and function are going to go together even at the level of cells. All right. So moving down, we're going down these levels of hierarchy. Some important molecules we got to know are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. So, carbohydrates. Lots of different carbohydrates are out there. One important variety are sugars, such as glucose, which is pictured here. Glucose, of course, is a fuel, so sugars can function as fuels, and they can play structural roles as well. We see some sugars attached to our cell membrane here. Proteins. Proteins are chains of amino acids. They can function as enzymes where they catalyze, in other words, speed up a chemical reaction. They can function in transport, like this protein over here is called hemoglobin, which helps you transport oxygen in your blood. You can break down proteins for fuel. They also form structures in our body, including over here, part of our plasma membrane, our cell membrane, separates inside and outside of our cells. Lipids, a variety of compounds are considered lipids, including fats. These are fat cells over here. Notice the nucleus, pointing out some nuclei here. Fats, of course, can function as fuel, also function as support. Steroids are going to be often used as hormones, so chemical signals like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, those are steroids. There are lipids called phospholipids, the little yellow guys with the double tail, orange as well, and those guys help make up our cell membrane. So a variety of structural jobs as well. Nucleic acids, there's two main nucleic acids we have. DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the genetic material that are in our chromosomes inside our nucleus. Plus there's a nucleic acid called RNA, which is going to help in protein production. All right. And with that, folks, we are done with levels of structure. And we're moving on to our final topic for this introduction to anatomy and physiology lecture. And that final topic is this idea of homeostasis. Homeostasis is the body's state of dynamic internal balance. It is where we maintain variables in a controlled range. Now, what do I mean by variables? Body temperature, the composition of your blood, like your levels of sodium, potassium, glucose, concentration of gases in your blood, pH in your blood and your body fluids, the osmolarity of your blood, the pressure of your blood, the output of your heart rate, your respiratory rate, rate that hormones are being produced, rate that chemical reactions are proceeding. These are all things your body maintains. All things your body maintains within a particular specific range. And that maintenance of these variables, the process of doing that is called homeostasis. And as you could probably guess, when your body goes out of homeostasis, that is bad. Think about it. Your body temperature going too high or too low, that's out of homeostasis. Worst case scenario, you can die. So it's crucial for life that we maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis in our body, in our different organs, in our different tissues, even in our different cells. Now, one quick caveat, not really a caveat, just something to notice, is these variables do have different levels in different places. Like if we're in our blood plasma, there's an acceptable homeostatic level of sodium, which is not too different from our tissue fluid, but very different from inside our cells. So different places can have different homeostatic variables, different pHs, for example, different pressures. Don't worry about memorizing these numbers. We don't have to do that. But do know that there are going to be differences. Okay, how do we do it? How do we maintain homeostasis? We do with something called a negative feedback system, which is what this graph is demonstrating. So in this graph, I got a y-axis here. The level of something, body temperature, oxygen amount, oxygen concentration in your blood. And on my x-axis, I got time. Now, things change. But as things change, as something goes up, our body will initiate a response to then bring that level back down. So with this pink being the normal here. Something goes up, our body responds, brings it back down. Something goes down, the body responds, brings it back up. So things in our body are never like a straight line graph, but they go up a little, they come down a little, they go down a little, they come up a little bit. And that response, where something changes, your body then causes the opposite to occur. That's called negative feedback. So body temp goes up, we bring it back down. That's negative feedback. Blood pressure goes down, we bring it back up. That's negative feedback. We're always doing negative feedback. Always, 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 always. And to do negative feedback, there are three major parts of the system that allows us to do this. Three parts: receptor, control center, and effector. So receptor detects the change. A control center compares the new value, whatever body temp has changed to a particular set point. Then effectors, which are often muscles or glands, are going to do the action that corrects the change. So these are my three components. We're going to get some examples like within the human system. Don't worry. This is kind of analogous, though. Before we get to humans, let's talk about your house. Think about the fact that you're going to maintain the temperature of your house. So if the room temp falls to 67, that's getting kind of chilly for me. All right. The thermostat is going to act as a receptor and a control center. Thermostat is measuring the temperature and then comparing it to the set point, the desired value. Then the thermostat is going to tell the effector, in this case, the furnace here. I like this furnace here. It's kind of interesting drawing. The furnace is then going to be the effector. It's going to correct correct the change in the variable by outputting heat, bringing the temp back up. And notice that then the system shuts down, right? It's a self-ending cycle here, which is pretty cool. So that is an example in your house. What about an example in your body? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Before we do so, let's get a few more terms in here, okay? Notice I got a cycle here. I've got my variable. My variable is measured by a receptor. Receptor tells the control center, hey, the variable has changed. Control center compares the new variable level to the desired set point. Then the control center tells the effector, and the effector fixes things. Now, the connection, the information pathway between the receptor and the control center is called the afferent pathway. Afferent means towards. So we're going towards our control center. The connection, the pathway between the control center and the effector is called the efferent pathway. Efferent means going away from something. So in this case, going away from the control center. Afferent and efferent pathways are usually either nerves or hormones. Okay? Two major ways we communicate in our body. All right, so again, variable changes. Sometimes we call that a stimulus. Sensor detects it, tells the control center. Control center says, whoa, that's not right. Something's too high or too low. Control center then tells a particular effector, which exerts a response, which fixes the original change. Now, for example, in our body temp exceeds 37 degrees centigrade. Nerve cells in both your skin and your brain are acting as receptors. You have a temperature regulatory center in your brain. Nerve cells are telling that regulatory center, hey, body temp's going up. Regulatory center compares current versus normal, decides current is too high, tells sweat glands to make sweat, and we lose heat. Now, this connection right here between the receptor and the control center, that is our afferent pathway. Whereas this connection right here between the control center and the effector, that's our efferent pathway. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff, good stuff. Here is another example in our body. So blood glucose level is our variable. Blood glucose level goes up. Pancreas detects it, playing the role of receptor. Pancreas actually makes the decision about it, playing the role of control center. Pancreas releases insulin. Insulin tells the liver to vacuum up that glucose from the blood, and blood glucose levels come back down. So the liver is playing the role of the effector. The pancreas is playing the role of the receptor and the control center. Insulin is the communication between the pancreas and the liver. So between control center and the effector, insulin is acting as our efferent pathway. And we got a similar situation, I'm not going to go through it, with a decline in blood glucose. Fantastic. So that was negative feedback. By the way, negative is not bad, right? Negative just means like opposite. Something goes up, we bring it down. Something goes down, we bring it up. There are also positive feedbacks, though. Positive feedbacks don't do the opposite of the initial change. In positive feedback, we increase, we augment the strength, the magnitude of the initial stimulus. In a positive feedback, something goes up, then our response makes it go up more, which then makes it go up more, which then makes it go up more. Or in a similar fashion, something goes down and our response makes it go down more, and then more and more and more. Now, obviously, positive feedback cannot be that common in the body because it doesn't maintain something, right? Negative feedback maintains variables at certain levels. Positive feedbacks, amplifies something. But there are situations where we need that amplification. One of them happens in what's called the fetal ejection reflex. Not my favorite name, definitely. But we got a beautiful baby here. Baby is pushing on the cervix, which is the neck of the uterus, and it's stretching the cervix. That's our initial stimulus here. Cervical stretch. Signals go to the brain. Brain releases a hormone. Brain gets the pituitary gland to release a hormone called oxytocin, carried in the blood to the uterus. Oxytocin tells the muscle in the uterus to squeeze, which pushes the baby's head onto the cervix even more, causing cervical stretch to increase. So our initial stimulus was stretch to the cervix. Then a response resulted in more cervical stretch. And this will continue, of course, until what happens? Until the baby is born. And this is a situation where we want a process to, continue to a greater degree. And so positive feedback is perfect here. Another example is in breastfeeding. When the baby is going to pull at the structures in the mammary glands, signal travels to the brain. Brain actually tells the pituitary to release that same hormone called oxytocin, which then causes milk release. And then the baby gets that milk, then the baby continues to feed, and so we'll have increased stretch on the mammary structures until the baby is full. Now, this is a situation where, time is important. We want to get that milk produced and moved quickly, and a positive feedback facilitates that. We've got two female examples here. There are positive feedback systems that occur in blood clotting in both men and women, in nerve signaling, both men and women, and in stomach physiology, in the digestive proteins, in both men and women. But hey, that's it. We finished the entire intro to A&P stuff. We did it in under an hour. If you hung out for the entire hour, or 55 minutes, good on you for doing that. Way to go. If you took breaks, that's totally okay. Hopefully you were taking some notes, writing things down. You got to write everything down. You got to read, write, recite. That's the name of the game. And on that note, I will bid you farewell. I will see you next time. Bye bye.